I'm Will Buxton, and you're listening to the DIVEBOMB IndyCar Podcast.
Welcome back, DIVEBOMB IndyCar Podcast. And on the day of release, there is just 7 days to go until the season opener on the streets of St. Petersburg for the 2025 NTT IndyCar Series, as Fox Sports start broadcasting the series for the first time. And there's nobody better than to take us through the move to Fox Sports for IndyCar than Will Buxton, who will be the play-by-play commentator for 2025. So, Will, it's an absolute pleasure for you to join us.
Thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it. Yeah, as you say, massive year, big change for a lot of us. Big change for the sport as well. You know, a new broadcast partner in Fox, and everybody there is massively excited about the opportunity that this represents for Fox, for the championship as well. I think it's a really, really exciting time for the sport. I would say that, obviously, but no, it's a really exciting time.
And I'm sure you've answered this question way too many times, but it's just our courtesy to ask it, is why did you make the switch? You know, you've been very successful in F1. You've covered that for years and years and years, and you've moved over to IndyCar, a great series, we will all say, but with much less recognition than it deserves. So what was the thought into the decision? Precisely that.
Much less recognition than it deserves. You know, I've been a massive fan of IndyCar. I can't even tell you how long. You know, I think my first time watching IndyCar would have been when Mansell went across in the early 90s as F1 world champion, and I used to stay up late at night and try and watch the races and not let my parents hear the fact that I was watching TV way later than I should have done, because I should have been going to sleep and going to school the next morning. And that's I think was my first taste of IndyCar, and then I've been really fortunate to work in motorsport for nearly 25 years, and over that time you can't help but recognize the phenomenal racing that's exhibited in IndyCar. I've been lucky enough to go across, make friends in the paddock, made friends through F1 and Formula 2 and GP2 and F3 who've actually gone over and had success out there as well. Deep down, there was always a part of me that really wanted to go and do IndyCar. And actually back in 2012, when I was working at Speed Channel, which was a part of the Fox family, and they lost the rights to NBC. I didn't know at the end of the year if I'd still be working in Formula One the year after. And so I went to Sonoma that year, and the sole objective that weekend was trying to pivot and make my way out to IndyCar. It didn't quite work out then. It's taken a decade and a bit longer, but here we are. And Formula One is right at the peak of how popular it's ever been, and that trajectory is only on the upward path. And so a lot of people will ask, why leave now? I consider myself incredibly lucky that I've been able to walk away while I was still in love with the sport, and be able to actually leave of my own volition and of my own decision, and at a time that feels right for me. And to step into something that I'm hugely, hugely excited about, and genuinely is a dream come true, something I never thought I would ever have the opportunity to do. One, work in IndyCar. Two, get back into the commentary box. Those two things combined with the direction that Fox is taking, the impetus they're putting behind it, it was just too good an opportunity to pass up. I couldn't say no.
And I think you've said this kind of came about, or was maybe first mentioned over dinner with James Hinchcliffe. So can you kind of just speak a bit about how this came together, whether it was something that you kind of went exploring, or whether it was something that was maybe proposed to you first of all? So how did it all happen?
Oh, yeah, it's all Hinch's fault. It's all Hinch's fault. We were having dinner in Brazil, one of the last races of the season, and we're just chatting about the future. And obviously I knew he was talking to Fox, and I said, how are the negotiations going? And he was like, yeah, good. How are you set for next year? How's everything going with F1? And I said, well, actually, we're not signed for next year yet. We're chatting, but we're not signed. And he was like, okay, that's interesting. I said, why is it interesting? He said, well, your name came up in an IndyCar meeting. I was like, shut up. It didn't. And he was like, no, seriously. I was like, okay, what? Like presenter, pit reporter? He went, no, commentator. And suddenly my ears pricked up, and I was like, okay, tell me more. And we chatted, and at that point we kind of we sort of plotted out how will the next 3 to 5 years of our lives look if that came to be. And it was and I was suddenly really excited. And so Hinch hooked up a meeting, and actually my agent had been talking to Fox ever since the announcement was made. And so we picked back up with a couple of the guys that he'd been talking to earlier in the year, Jacob Ullman being one of them. And within a couple of weeks, we were in Vegas. I had my first call with Fox when I was in Vegas. And from that meeting, it was pretty clear, literally from the first 5 minutes of the call, that they were taking everything in a direction that massively appealed to me. Seemingly, I appealed to them. And there was just this, it was just a synergy from the first second. And it was like, yeah, this could be really, really exciting. We didn't sign until actually quite far into the new year. But from that point on, I think it was clear to me that I had a pretty big decision to make.
You sort of touched on this a minute ago, but you haven't done play-by-play commentary in probably over a decade now. So how much are you looking forward to getting back in the box doing that sort of role?
Massively. Listen, it's kind of like, I think it's kind of like, for me, it's like being a parent. My eldest is 15 and my youngest is almost 15, and my youngest is 18 months. And I remember when my youngest daughter was born, that I was freaking out about, lack of sleep and changing nappies and all the things I hadn't done in over a decade. And it turns out that it's kind of muscle memory. And when you love something that much, it sort of happens naturally. So I'm sort of hoping that's going to be the same way with commentary. Genuinely, my time in the commentary box, when I did GP2 and GP3 back in the day, were my happiest years in motorsport. I absolutely loved that time. It was very raw. I'd never had any training in commentary. It was just, have a microphone and off you go. But I had a lot of fun with it. And, there are things that I probably would have changed and things I would have done a bit differently. And I get the opportunity to do that now, which is something I never thought I'd have. I kind of thought that maybe I'd pigeonhole myself now into a role of presenter or pundit or whatever. So to have this opportunity to go back to play-by-play is huge. It's also a massive responsibility, and it's a huge undertaking because, it is something that I haven't done for 10 years. And, will there be chinks in the armor, and will there be rust that I need to brush off? 100%. But what was great was we had a week over in LA, and I went into the studio with James Hinchcliffe and with Townsend Bell, and we ran through some of the 2024 races, and they didn't tell us which ones they were going to give us, and they just threw races at us, and it just meshed, and it just felt natural, and it felt great. And I really enjoyed being back behind the mic and getting to call races. I was really worried about calling ovals because I've never called an oval race before. I've called road courses, I've called street courses, but I've never called an oval. And they threw me straight in with the Indy 500, and that took a few laps. I'll tell you, it took a few. But then you kind of your race brain and your commentary brain kind of, it finds the right gear, and you're suddenly noticing, you're not just focusing on the fight that you're looking at, you're also looking at the fight that's 3-4 packs back, that actually that guy on the move, give it 10-15 laps, they're going to be in the mix for the top 5 right now. So it's relearning the things that you know and that you've learned, but also for me, these things you've not done in 10 years. So the great thing with any race weekend is we will have the practice sessions to roll us and prepare us then for quali and then the race. So I can't wait to get back to it. So far so good. And it's and having those two alongside you as well. They have such a great relationship, and they have a relationship that everybody knows and recognizes. So part of my role is not to step on that and not to change that. And it's almost to kind of, be a mediator for these two quarreling old couple. I have to be kind of, marriage counseling for those two. So that's kind of my job as well.
I think we've all seen the clips from 2012 of Johnny Chicotto and running off someone off the side of the track. I think that'd be a bit different nowadays to what that was like.
I don't know. I mean, this is the thing, and this is the great thing with commentary is you can't prepare. You can't plan, you can't prepare. If somebody goes and puts a stupid move on somebody and does something daft, am I going to be able to sit on my hands and not call it out as being something daft? No, because that's not me. You know, I think the way I commentate will always have elements of the way I've commentated. I'm a lot older now. I'd like to think a bit wiser, but my emotions will still be there, and I will still be ruled by those emotions. And you know, you've got to keep it on the level, and you've got to keep it neutral. But if somebody does something dumb, I'll still call that out. I'm not going to change. That's you know.
You said you did the 500, but what other races did you do in this kind of mock broadcast?
So we did street roads and oval. So we started on St. Pete, which is great, and then we rolled to the 500, and then we did Laguna Seca, which was really cool. Very different races, very different tracks, but also the mad thing was doing St. Pete, and by the time we sort of finished doing that, I got everybody's liveries in my mind, and then we rolled to the 500, and everyone's running different liveries, and then they dropped us in, I think, like lap 30 at Laguna Seca. So not only are we in the middle of like quite a convoluted split strategy race, but also everyone again was in different cars and there were different drivers, and so it took me like 4 or 5 laps to figure out who the hell was who. And what was going on with strategy. And also we had the difference of Hinch and Townsend were calling it like it was 2024, but I was calling it like it was 2025. So all the stats that I've been jamming into my head over the last 6 weeks since I did the deal to come on board, they're all the stats I'm running with. So I'm running with Palou being a 3-time champion, and I'm running with Newgarden, you know, being on the look for his 3rd consecutive 500 and all of that. So they were still calling it like 24, but I was calling it like 25 because I don't need to confuse myself by trying to recall what happened last year. I was just calling it like it was happening in 25. So that was good fun. And
I know you probably can't say loads, but did you get to see the graphics package that they are using as well?
I have, and they're awesome. I don't know what I'm allowed to say. Probably nothing. So I won't say much other than they look great. They're very Fox. They're very in keeping with their vibe, their feel of how they present motorsport. There are some really great. I don't want to say additions. I want to say I guess, you know, kind of new pieces that will come in graphics that you haven't seen before on an IndyCar broadcast, which is hugely exciting. Just, you know, for us in the commentary booth in terms of aiding us with the narrative of the race, but also in terms of letting the folks at home understand more about what's going on in the cockpit, what's going on with strategy, how the race has evolved, those kind of things. And also it's, you know, they're big, they're colorful. You're not going to get confused as to who's where and who's who and who's in what car and what tires they're running, all those kind of things. Fox have done, I think, a really, really great job. And, you know, believe me, I've seen enough broadcasts. I've worked on enough broadcasts to see pylons and graphics that do work and don't work. And there's been a lot of thought, a lot of effort that's gone into this, and a lot of stuff that I think the first time it pops up, people are going to sort of take a step back and go, "Wow, okay, I wasn't expecting that from an IndyCar broadcast. That's cool." And yeah, it looks great. They've done a fantastic job.
That's what we like to hear.
What's your thoughts on showing a booth of Hinch and Townsend? I think maybe I'll describe them as controlled chaos a lot of the time. 2 very big personalities. Should be quite fun, I'd imagine. It's
going to be great. You know, I've known Hinch since he was racing in A1 GP. Actually, even the days when he wasn't racing in A1 GP, when he was doing the pit reporting. And I've known Townsend since we both worked at Speed Channel together, you know, 15 years ago. So I've known these guys a long time. Townsend actually gave me a 2-seater ride around Indianapolis Motor Speedway when I was with NBC. So, you know, we've all gone through a lot together. We know each other really well. There's a relationship that already exists between the 3 of us. And, you know, from the first moment, it's just been very, very easy. I do understand that, you know, my comparison with changing nappies. Yes, am I comparing those two to a pair of toddlers? At times, possibly. But yeah, you know, listen, I don't want to stand on them. I don't want to get in the way of their banter. It's a big part of what makes the broadcast so enjoyable. So that's going to be great fun. And playing referee between those two will be very, very enjoyable.
And I think, I mean, you've kind of alluded to it, but there's this feeling around IndyCar that the racing product that there is and kind of the potential that there is really far outweighs the attention that the series actually does get. So maybe say you're speaking to someone who doesn't watch IndyCar, what would you say the big appeal of the series really is?
I'd say, do you like Formula One? And when they say yes, I'd say, now imagine it with overtaking. And that's IndyCar. I don't mean to say that, to sort of make Formula One sound bad. Formula One is incredible, and it's renowned throughout the world as the pinnacle of motorsport. And a lot of that has to do with the technical ingenuity that goes into it, the incredible work that the teams do to design their cars, bring updates, bring upgrades every single weekend. It is as much a technical challenge as it is a driving challenge. IndyCar, for me, is more about the driving challenge. And the fact that on any given weekend, any one of 27 drivers can win that race, and you don't know when you roll to green which driver that's going to be, and you genuinely don't. Okay, you have your favorites, and you have your teams who have such considerable strength in the championship, like your Ganassis and your Penske's. But you have your McLarens, and you have your Andretti's, you have your Shanks who are just waiting to break in there and do something amazing. You have your, potentially Foyt this year with the Penske hookup as well, who could do something magic. You have Rahal, who spring a surprise every now and then. You have, what are Prema going to do this year? Looking super quick, top 10 times in testing. You just don't know weekend to weekend. And it's great. I was going through the stats because I'm making my stat sheets for the year and looking through the last time a driver didn't make it out of the first part of qualifying and then didn't make it through the second part of qualifying and then didn't make the fast six and all of that. And every single one of those stats is 2024. So even the greatest of all time, Scott Dixon, failed to make it out of the first part of qualifying last year. Will Power, more pole positions than anyone in history, didn't have a pole position last year. It's so competitive. It's so tight. You genuinely, legitimately do not know. And it is a championship where the driver makes the difference. And it doesn't matter what paddock you work in the world, whether it's Formula One, Formula 2, Formula 3, World Endurance Championship, any racing championship on Earth, if you asked anyone in those paddocks, where's the greatest racing on Earth, other than Mazda MX-5 Championship, they would tell you it's IndyCar. And it's like the world's greatest secret, the world of motor racing's greatest secret anyway, because no one will say it on the record, because they want to promote their own championship. But everybody in racing knows that IndyCar has the best racing. So how do we then get that out and tell the rest of the world, listen, you love racing, come and watch IndyCar? Because I guarantee you watch one IndyCar race, you're hooked for life because it's incredible. And that's all we need to do, is get people to watch one race, and hopefully they just keep coming back week in, week out. And it's not an either or scenario. You don't have to be a fan of Formula One or IndyCar, or the World Endurance Championship, or IndyCar, or Formula E, or IndyCar. There is enough scope, enough space, within everyone's motor racing heart, I think, to watch more than one championship. And IndyCar, I think, being where it is in the States, the timing of the races as they are, you can watch a Grand Prix. You can go and grab yourself some food, come back, sit down and watch an IndyCar race. Have your lunch with the F1, have your tea with the IndyCar. Perfect. What a Sunday. Absolutely mega. I would hope that, particularly in the US, because this is where my focus is going to be for this year, because I'm with Fox. But I think a bit in the UK as well, because obviously the Fox coverage is taken on Sky. I would really hope that this new generation of fan who has fallen in love with Formula One, and because of that, open wheel racing, will take a look at IndyCar and say, you know what, I need to give this a go. I need to go and see, what this is all about. Because I guarantee they'll love it. You guys know, it's phenomenal. But we'll have this massive opportunity, and we have this undiscovered diamond in the rough. And it's our job to tell the world about how brilliant it is. And IndyCar is kind of at the space that Formula One was 10, 15 years ago. All it needs is the right promotion. All it needs is the right kick in the pants. And you get people on board to watch it, and there's no limit to how big it can get in the United States first and foremost, and then growing globally. But our objective is America. Our objective is not just to take it back to where it was in the 90s, not just to take it back to its heyday, but to go beyond that and to make it more popular than it's ever been. That's the objective, plain and simple.
What do you think Fox will really bring to IndyCar, which will take it to the next level, which you're sort of suggesting the hope is to do?
Look, first and foremost, I think one of the most important things that Fox is bringing to this is every race in one place on network television. Now, there are only 2 sports in the United States that will be played out exclusively on network television in 2025. The NFL and IndyCar. That's it. And that shows the investment and the belief that Fox has in IndyCar. That it will be one of 2 sports that has every single event live on network television, because everything else is split between network and streaming platforms and on demand. Every race on network television. That's never happened before. So that is absolutely massive, first and foremost. And that is a huge sign of Fox's belief in this championship and what Fox wants to do with this championship. Then you need only to look at the commercials that have been put out, the investment and the work that's gone into those. And, we've all seen them with Joseph and Pato and Alex. The fact that Fox bought out those spots in the commercial periods of the Super Bowl to play them, that's no small investment to do that. That's absolutely massive. And those are just the tip of the iceberg. The team that they've assembled to work behind the scenes, to direct, to produce the shows, is one of the most talented, one of the most experienced that I've ever seen, that I've ever worked with, certainly. I've had more, I can genuinely tell you, I've had more meetings this year in the, where are we, 6 or 7 weeks of 2025, I think, than I did in the entirety of 2024 in terms of production meetings and spitballing ideas. And it's great because there's no such thing as a stupid idea. Everyone's bringing something to the table. Hinch is bringing stuff to the table. Towns is bringing stuff to the table. And one of the things that I'm hoping to bring across from Formula One, I was there right at the start of Liberty's takeover. I was in those meetings. I was part of the move towards embracing digital media and the growth of the sport and the popularity of the sport. Before Drive to Survive was even a thing, Formula One had already set in place a path of how they were going to increase eyeballs on the sport. There are a lot of learnings from those years and from the last 7-8 years of what Liberty's done with Formula One that we can take and we can transpose over to IndyCar. So, you have a huge group of people who have worked in a variety of sports and a variety of motorsports and on a variety of networks, all coming together with one sole objective, which is make this thing bigger and better and more popular than it's ever been.
And obviously with the commercials, as you've mentioned, that's almost doing something that we've not seen from IndyCar promotion, which is actually tapping into the drivers, into the personalities, which was something that F1 did so well. Yeah. How valuable do you think that side of it will be? Because obviously we know the product's great in IndyCar, but also there's some real untapped personalities in that field too.
Yeah, and they're all really media savvy. Like, you try and get an F1 driver to, do a commercial or whatever, they hate it. They're the most famous drivers in the world and they hate the limelight. IndyCar drivers, every single one of them, they love it. They're trained for it. And they're so good on camera. Like, they're incredible. Any driver, I remember when, I was doing the F1 post-race shows, if we'd get like a Pietro Fittipaldi or anybody who'd spent any time in an IndyCar paddock, they would just, plug and play, go. And they had the lines. They knew what they were saying. They were just they just oozed charisma. You have these amazing, trained for TV personalities, and they have personalities, and that's key. And every one of them is unique. So our job, along with telling the story of the race, is to tell the story of the people and to make people care. That's what I want to do, is when we roll to green every Sunday, whether you love or hate them, I want you to care. I want you to have an emotional investment in at least one of those drivers. It's funny, I was talking to Joseph Newgarden about it a couple of weeks ago, and I said, we want them to love you guys. And Joseph went, yeah, or hate. And I was like, okay, they recognize that there are going to be people that, Joseph's a divisive persona. People love him or hate him. Same with Santino. You love him or you hate him. These guys are willing to embrace that. And I love that because they recognize that, it's the old Elvis Presley thing. His manager used to sell I Hate Elvis badges because they were still making money from them. If you can embrace being the bad guy as well as being the good guy, that's absolutely huge. And, our job, and the thing that, I've learned as well through doing Drive to Survive and stuff like that is it's not just about the racing. And actually, more than the racing, the thing that really draws people in and really connects you to a driver is personal stories and is personality. So our job is going to be to tell those stories and help people find a connection with a driver that they like and that they want to root for. Yeah, when we roll a green, I want viewers to care. I want them to genuinely care about just one. I have just one driver. That's all I care about is just get them to love or hate one driver.
And you've obviously had the privilege of kind of building a bit of a following, a bit of a platform from the work you've done on the F1 side. So do you have any plans of just using your own platform to really benefit IndyCar and kind of draw in maybe some of these F1 fans who follow you?
Yeah, I'd love to do that. It's funny because the whole social media thing is, for me, it's always been kind of like a necessity. Like you kind of have to be on social media and all of that. And I've never really figured out a happy medium for myself with it, where I get along with it, and also where I actually know how to utilize it. I'm not one of those people that has an agency or something do my social media accounts or my tweets or anything like that. I do them all myself, which is why they're fairly all over the place. Yeah, I listen, I think that is something that I would love to be able to do. I never really saw myself as having that much of a following, but apparently I do. So yeah, what's, again, and this is part and parcel of the whole thing. What's brilliant is working with the digital team at Fox, and they are, brilliant, and the plans that they've got and what we're going to do and how we're going to promote the sport, through digital means is phenomenal. And then you have Penske Entertainment, and you have the whole IndyCar side of it as well. And I've already started doing some bits with them in the off season. There's a few more bits coming out. We've got a really fun one coming out actually just before the season starts, which isn't one of the kind of the driver team preview things. There's another couple of little bits which are really, really fun. But the fact that they wanted to engage and they wanted to do this right from the off is really, really strong, I think. So yeah, anything that we can do through that. But it's not just about, it's not just about me. It's not just about one person. It's all of us together, and most importantly through Fox and what we can bring, and then IndyCar itself, because they've got big plans, and Penske Entertainment have got huge plans of how they can evolve, how they can change, how they can grow, how they can tell those stories as well. And I'm sure you've seen from the start of the year, there has been a real increase in the frequency and the quality and the topics of what IndyCar itself has been sending out. A lot more historic stuff, a lot more deep dives into teams and previews and stuff that they've never done before. There's been a real sea change, I think, in 2025 for them in terms of how they're promoting themselves.
Since this gig was secured, you said, 5-6 weeks ago, what sort of personal preparation are you doing? Because obviously you can practice the commentary on that side, you can watch back the old races, but I guess from your perspective, there's still a lot of stuff you've got to do behind the scenes that people maybe don't appreciate.
Oh, huge amounts. So I've spent almost every day in my office, locked to my screen, sort of writing my own stat pages. We have an amazing statistician over at Fox who has been doing IndyCar for years and years and years, Russ Thompson, who is just like, the guy, the go-to guy. And literally every day I'm sending him emails. Oh, I've found an anomaly. Why is this pole position counted and this one isn't, and what happened here and what's this? Because I'm rather than just taking Russ's stuff and reading it, that kind of thing never goes in for me. I have to do it myself. So I've gone through and I've done every single driver, every single team, making their stat pages. And I put a thing up on social the other day of kind of, screen wipe of all the Excel sheet that I'd done, and somebody went, "Oh my goodness, like the colors are horrible and it's all over the place." And I'm like, "No, that's their race colors. That's the car." So I can see who's who, and when was their first race, and when was their first podium, and when was their first win, and when was their last win, and how many wins have they got, how many top tens have they got, how all these kind of things. And then I went to Russ and I was just like, right, I've got the all-time records, but I need to split these up now. I want the street and road course records, and I want the oval records, and then I want the records track specific. So and Russ was just like, so I'm properly going into everything because I want to know everything. I've invested half the books you can see behind me are brand new, because I want to deep dive the history. I need to know the history. Am I going to know everything by the time we get to St. Pete? No. In 6 weeks, I'm never going to know everything. But hopefully I'm prepared enough, and I've rammed enough statistics into my brain that I've got a few things up my sleeve that I can pull out. But yeah, it's been a lot of work, and as you say, there's been a lot of watching races back and watching moments back, and obviously I know moments and I remember races as a fan. But when you're watching it from a professional standpoint, it's a very different sort of lens that you're watching them through. And it's hard as well. Like, I've been watching a lot of races back so that I can listen to Hinch and Townsend and listen to how they bounce off each other. But then I have to be really careful not to listen too much to Diff, because Diff is a great mate of mine. And I worked with Diff for years on NBC when I was pit reporter and he was lead commentator. And it would be really, really easy for me to just slide into doing a very poor imitation of Diff. And that's not what I want to do. And that's not why I've been brought in. And that I wouldn't be true to myself, and I would be disrespecting Diff, as well, if I was to slide into something like that. So I kind of have to almost, when Diff's commentating, I almost kind of have to like kind of push it out and wait for Townsend and James to start talking, because I don't want to, I don't want to try and ape his commentary. As brilliant as it is, I have to be my own man. I can't be a Diff imitation, because no one can imitate Diff, because he's Diff and he's amazing.
Yep, of course. And are you moving over to the US then, or is it kind of going to be spending kind of the off season in the UK and going over to the US for the season?
I was considering it, but I've bought so many books that I don't think I can afford the excess luggage now to get over there, because it's too heavy. No, seriously though, I'm going to commute. Year one, going to commute. I've been able to split the season down into 8 trips. So there are 2 really busy periods. There's May and July that are a race every weekend, or something going on every weekend. So May, I'm going to live in Indianapolis, and my wife's going to come out and live with me during that month. So we get to see each other, and my daughter as well. We get to do that. And July, I'll live in the States as well. Not sure where yet. We're thinking LA, but rental prices have gone up a bit. Maybe Florida, something like that. Just so I've got a base for a couple of days in between races that I can see family. But other than that, it's standalones or double headers. And, honestly, 8 international flights a year compared to 24, that's easy. I'm all good with 8. That's pretty good for me.
We're not here to compare IndyCar and F1. They're obviously great, but in their slightly different ways. But from sort of an IndyCar perspective, whether that's a growth or a sporting perspective, do you think IndyCar can take anything from F1 which can help build the sport, maybe build up the fan base?
Yeah, I mean, I think, everybody assumes that Formula One's growth came solely from Drive to Survive. And there's a recognition of that, and it played a massive part. But putting it solely down to that fails to recognize the tremendous work that went on behind the scenes at Formula One when Liberty took over. First and foremost, to create a communications department that didn't exist before, a marketing department that didn't exist before, and critically, from my perspective, because I was right in the heart of it, a digital department, which never existed, because until Liberty came in, you put anything up online about Formula One that was, a video, and it was taken down. There was no YouTube channel. There was no Twitter account. There was nothing. Didn't exist. And Liberty made all that happen and engaged with a rapidly evolving social media landscape, and recognized also that in an era where a lot of Formula One was behind a paywall, the way to get new eyeballs was to appeal to social media by giving people just enough that it made them want to tune in and made them want to watch. So there's a huge amount from those early years of Liberty's takeover that I think can be transposed and can be learned from, because there's a fantastic, I think there's a fantastic kind of, not a school, but a just an example, of how to go about it. Obviously, the social media and the digital landscape has changed tremendously since that happened, but the basics and the base element of putting it in front of people in order to create a new audience, I think that's something that can be followed and can be learned from. Because as we've seen with other sports who just thought a drive to survive is all we need, they very quickly realized it wasn't, and they needed more, because none of them have had the success of the F1 show. And so much of that came down to circumstance and happenstance, and the fact that Drive to Survive really found a market and found an audience during the COVID-19 pandemic. Everyone was stuck at home. Everyone was searching for connection. Everyone was searching for social interaction that they weren't having. And suddenly they found these superstar, rock star racing drivers and got to know them and fell in love with them. And then Formula One had somehow been able to create a championship season, in the midst of a pandemic. It was absolutely crazy. So they could watch the sport at the same time as watching the series. That combination of factors is not going to happen again. So you're dealing with a different playing field now. So you have to think differently, and you have to go about things differently. You can't just follow the same playbook and expect it to, reap the same rewards. Just it doesn't happen.
Kind of looking at your own career, IndyCar really, from what we've discussed here, seems like a long-term deal. But I know there will be people wondering, is the F1 door closed? Could people see you maybe back in F1, for instance, later in the year when the IndyCar season obviously finishes at the end of August?
This year, I don't think so. F1 were lovely. Listen, I let them know about my decision, obviously, before the announcement was made. And I let Stefano know, and I let the guys at F1 TV know, and everyone has been absolutely lovely about it. And they've, given my entire professional life to Formula One, and they've been very supportive, very sweet, very understanding, and have said, I'm always welcome back, which is lovely. So listen, I might attend a couple of races later in the year, probably more as a fan than doing anything professionally. Which will be great, and actually, I'm really looking forward to watching an F1 season as a fan, and not having to worry about pissing anyone off by saying the wrong thing. So that's gonna be nice. But no, I mean, look, in the future, at some point, never say never, But for now, listen, I have a 3-year deal with Fox, and my hope is that 3-year deal will become 5, 10. Who knows? But yeah, my objective very much is IndyCar. My focus is IndyCar. That is where I want to be, and that is where I want to throw all of my effort right now. Is growing this incredible championship and making people fall in love with it. Had the most amazing opportunity over these last few years of helping people to fall in love with Formula One. I would love to be able to do that for IndyCar and bring people in and make them fall in love with this thing that we know is so incredible.
I mean, I'm hoping we might have F1 fans tuning in here that have been sold to IndyCar. I'm sure some of them will also be wondering as well, will you still be appearing on Drive to Survive beyond this year?
I don't know. I hope so. That would be great. Listen, they've always kind of shown me in the chair, but never in the paddock. So I guess the opportunity would still be there. So let's see. To be decided. But yeah, I'd love to. I've loved being a part of that series, and we've never, year on year, we've never agreed that I'd come back the next year, and they've never asked if I'd come back the next year. We just they would give me a call and go, right, when are you getting in the chair for the first time? So yeah, it's not like we're sitting on a rolling contract or anything like that. It's always just been come in and sit in a chair and answer some questions. So I'll wait for the call to go in and sit in the chair.
And look, after Drive to Survive, I think the question the viewers want to know is, you sort of made a little bit of a meme after pointing out the obvious year on year. So I think it's probably your chance to react to that and let everyone know your thoughts.
Well, it's funny, it was really lovely when we made the IndyCar announcement. There was such a wave of positivity around it. There was some negativity and people being like, oh, he's just going to state the obvious all the time. But my job on Drive to Survive kind of was to state the obvious, and some of the loveliest feedback that I got from that, be it through messages I've received online or when you meet people at races and they say, we're only here because of Drive to Survive or whatever, and then they'll say, I was watching like one of the first episodes and I didn't understand how something worked, and I asked my wife, or I shouted at the TV like, what does that mean? And then you came on the screen and you explained it. And that's kind of cool, because I think in motorsport, we expect people to have, like, there's a perception that everyone has this certain level of knowledge, but we all had to gather that knowledge. We all had to learn it at some point. We all had a first race, right, where we knew nothing. Whatever sport you follow, you had a first game where you knew nothing. And if someone hadn't taken you under their wing and taught you the rules, how do you learn? And Drive to Survive was never for the purists. It was never for the folks who've been watching it for 35, 40 years who knew everything about it. It was deliberately engineered to engage a new audience. And if you're engaging a new audience and you don't explain the basics, then people turn off really, really fast. I was watching the rugby one, the one about the Six Nations. And I come from a rugby school, and, I played rugby terribly. I was awful. My mother said she'd never seen anybody on a rugby field run so fast in the opposite direction to the ball. That's how bad I was. It just terrified me as a game. Anyway, I'm sidetracking. I understand how the Six Nations work, but within the first kind of 20, 30 minutes of that first episode, there wasn't an explainer of the fact that every team plays every team, and this is how the thing works. And so from that, I kind of found myself in this scenario of, like, even I, who kind of understand the Six Nations, I was still kind of confused about where was the narrative going with this, and how's this show set up. And I don't mind being a meme. If it means that I explain things to people who had no bloody clue about the sport and then they did, I don't mind being the goofball. I don't mind, people. And do you know what? It's lovely. It's really great, because I know most of it was meant in a jovial manner. Some of it was harsh, but most of it was meant in a jovial manner. And the best thing in the world is that for a while, whenever I told my teenage daughter, or asked my teenage daughter to do anything, or I said something stupid, or I explained something in an overly simplistic manner, she would just look at me and be like, oh, Dad, you're such a meme. So that, if I've got the recognition from my teenage daughter that I am a meme, I'm a happy man. That's fine.
And I mean, talking of things that people seem to love on the internet, we've got the whole Hinch and Townsend going, whoa, on the broadcast. And if you look away for 1 second and you hear it, it's quite startling, actually. So yeah. Were you exposed to any of that during the mock broadcast? Are you developing your own whoa?
No, I'm not. I've joked that the woes are actually intellectual property of NBC Sports and will not be transferring across to Fox. But no, I mean, if it's you again, you react in the moment. If it's a huge incident that's happening, your natural reaction might be whoa. Because your reaction outside of a commentary box might be to, drop a word that you can't say in the commentary box. So woe is, yeah, I will always try to explain and enunciate what is happening. But there are moments when a woe is absolutely appropriate.
I guess this is quite a broad question in many ways, but what are you most looking forward to about the year and about the season? You know, that could be a personal thing from a commentary side, or also, you know, there's so many storylines constantly in IndyCar that people will be keeping an eye on too.
That's a great question. I'm really looking forward to the 500. It's going to be incredibly emotional, and I don't think I'm prepared for it at all. I don't think I don't think you can ever be prepared for the enormity of not just calling your first Indy 500, but I will be attending my first Indy 500. So doing those two things together it's insane. That's a huge one for me. As you say, the storylines could be absolutely incredible this year. There are so many gifted drivers, so many incredible teams. There are so many things to be keeping an eye on every single weekend. But for me, the greatest joy I can take from broadcasting is the joy of working with a phenomenal team and bringing every member of that team with you, and then growing and developing and lifting everybody and improving from weekend to weekend. It's teamwork, you know. We're kind of the extra team in the pit lane. That's how I always have seen sort of the role of being a broadcaster through everything that we've done. Is it's very similar to any racing team. You know, the person holding the microphone is the driver. They're the one that, you know, the camera's on and the focus is on, but they don't go on air without every single member of that team being absolutely incredible at the job that they do. And any one of them, if any element of it falls down, the whole thing falls down. And it's the same with the racing teams, the same with the broadcast. So to be working with an incredible group of people who I'm really only just getting to know, but every single moment that we spend together, I'm just reminded of their experience, the skill set that they bring to the mix, and how incredibly fortunate we are to have them. It's going to be, honestly, I can't wait to work with them all, because it's, as a broadcaster, I'm getting so excited about what's around the corner.
Somewhere in the depths of the internet, I've got a clip of all the woes, but they get progressively longer. So that might see the light of day sometime. I might share it sometime, but it's
Love it.
It is updating. It's a couple of years old, but it'll be out there somewhere at some point. But anyway, very simple. Who's your champion pick for 2025?
Oh, don't do that to me. I mean, it's so difficult to look past Palou, because he's so good. You know, still doesn't have an oval win. Kind of doesn't need it, does he? He's so good. But no, I'm gonna go someone different. You know, I think, would it be great to see Scott get a 7th and hit the all-time, you know, equal number 1 with AJ Foyt? Yeah, that would be amazing. Just like everyone, you know, wants Lewis Hamilton to get an 8th. You know, it's kind of that storyline that everyone's just waiting to bubble over. I think we might get a new champion. I think the changes that have been rung at Andretti are fascinating. I've been speaking to a couple of the drivers today. They are massively high on confidence. Colton finished the second half of last year in incredibly strong form. And if he can bring that momentum into this year, I'd love to see what they can do. I saw a mad statistic that Scott McLaughlin led 75% of the laps last year.
Wow.
I don't know if that's accurate or not. I need to double check that.
Sounds very high.
Yeah. It does sound ridiculously high, doesn't it?
Maybe ovals. That might make more sense.
Yeah, probably ovals. I need to relook at it. I can't remember where it was. Probably. I think Scott's got to have a shot. I'd love to see Scott, you know, take that challenge and run with it. And Pato at McLaren. You know, I think that's going to be fascinating. I think Lundgaard is going to keep him on his toes as well. Anybody who expects Lundgaard to be an easy one for Pato to just walk over is dreaming, because he's rapid fast. So, but you know what? This is the best thing about IndyCar. Who knows? Honestly, like, sit here right now. it could be any one of maybe 10 drivers. How great is that?
Amazing.
It's phenomenal. It's absolutely phenomenal. And then, and you look at it's only testing and the times don't mean anything. The entire field's within 0.7 of a second. What? It's absolutely brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. I'm excited to see what Prema can do. I've got a soft spot for Prema, obviously. Excited to see what Louis Foster can do. We both went to the same school. I'm like 20 years older than him, but both went to the same school. British rookie, excited to see what the lad can do, because I thought he had a brilliant year in Indy Next last year. His racecraft was phenomenal, overcoming the odds and just firing through the field. He was unstoppable. So very excited to see what he can do as well. But I don't know, I kind of have a feeling we're going to get a new champion. I don't know why.
You can't name one, or willing to put your neck on the line?
Colton or Pato.
Okay.
And then that breaks the Penske Ganassi monopoly as well. So that I've clearly undone myself with that, haven't I? Will it be Scott, Dixon, or McLaughlin? Will it be will Joseph get back to the title again? Will it be Palou for 3 in a row? That hasn't been done for God. The only one in the modern era who's done 3 in a row is Franchitti. And then you have to go back, and it was Bourdais, and then Ted Horn. I think they're the only ones that have ever done it in the history of the championship, going all the way back to the very roots of the sport. That's a really tough thing to do, 3 in a row. So the odds are against Alex to do the three-peat, as I may have to call it.
I mean, we tried to do this on our last episode. So listeners, if you haven't listened to our predictions episode already, listen to it after this, because we've got some outrageous predictions. So we'll see how they fare in comparison. Awesome. Well, Will, that's all we got for you. We really appreciate you and thankful for your time. And I'm sure we're very all looking forward, one, to hearing you in the booth, but to have the season start in St. Petersburg next week. Not long to go, and looking forward to hopefully what's going to be a great season ahead.
It's going to be a great year. It's going to be a fantastic year. And thank you so much for having me on. Let's do this again in a few months. Let's do it mid-season, something like that. We'll have a proper catch up again. But thank you for having me on. It is going to be an amazing year. I can't believe we're only a week away from St. Pete. But everyone at Fox is hugely excited for it. Been talking to the drivers both pre and post the test in Sebring. Everyone's fired up. Everyone's excited. Can't wait to get going.
And that's it. A huge thanks to Will for his time, and a huge thanks to the team at Fox Sports for organising this interview for us. We really hope you enjoyed Will speaking about his move to IndyCar with Fox Sports, as well as what Fox Sports will bring to IndyCar over the next year. If you're new to the DIVEBOMB IndyCar Podcast, or you're an existing listener of the show, stay tuned, because as we said, there was only 1 week to go into the green flag flies in St. Petersburg. We will have one more bumper episode before then, though, where we'll be joined by our good friend James Scott to cover the 2025 season. We will leave no stone unturned and cover all the storylines ahead of 2025. But for this week, that's all we've got time for. Thanks very much for watching, thanks very much for listening, and we'll see you next time.